Hello learners and welcome. Today we are going to look at integrated science, and by the time you are done with this revision you should feel ready to take your KJSEA exam. So remember that this exam has paper 1 comprising of 70 marks, 30 marks for multiple choice questions and 40 marks for structured marks. You see the structured questions, the one that you just answer from your own mind. Then we have paper 2 which is 30 marks. And paper 2 has written questions that assesses your practical skills in chemistry, in biology, and in physics. So together, the two papers cover scientific investigation, mixtures, elements, and compounds. And then it is also in integrated science that we get to learn about living things and the environment. We also get to learn about force and energy, you see. So all these things are going to be incorporated within this revision. The main aim is not just to read the question and answer it, but we want to revise. So in every question, make sure that you take your time, because we are going to cover more than just revealing the answer. We are going to see that if that question is asked in another way, what are you supposed to answer? So you can expect that we are going to learn a lot, and I hope that you are going to feel ready to take your exam by the end of this video. Welcome. We are going to begin with question 1, and question 1 asks that a learner accidentally splashes a dilute chemical into the eye. What should the learner do first? So we have the options there. Should the learner rub the eye firmly, or rinse the eye immediately with plenty of clean running water, or cover the eye and continue working, or add another chemical to neutralize it? Now, here, this question should be easy. So the correct answer is B, that the learner is supposed to rinse the eye immediately with plenty of clean running water. Why? Because once they do this, they are going to dilute and remove the chemical. You see, this is going to help, and then after that, they should now seek adult or medical help. But the first step when you're in the lab and then there is a chemical which has entered your eye, the first step is to rinse with a lot of water. Now, the other options are wrong because, first of all, rubbing may worsen the injury for option A. Then option D, when you delay, you are going to allow further damage, so you are not supposed to take time. And then number D, you should never add unknown chemical to the eye, because you may add and then even damage it more. Now, for this question, you should always remember the laboratory safety rules, you see. How you should know the hazard symbols when it comes to laboratory. As a learner, what are you supposed to know? You're supposed to know the symbols that are there in the lab. You're also supposed to know about personal protection. How should you protect yourself? Like wearing gloves, making sure that you don't just mix elements and chemicals that you don't know. And also you should learn about first aid, because first aid, like in this case, in this question, it is testing first aid. So make sure that you learn about first aid. Also, learn about safe heating and responsible disposal. You see, when you're using chemicals, how should you heat them? How should you dispose them responsibly? So these are the areas that are tested when it comes to laboratory. You see? And then once you understand that, there is no question that can be twisted in a way that you would understand. I have said that you should know about laboratory safety. You should know about the hazard symbols in the lab. You should know about personal protection. You should know about first aid, about safe heating and responsible disposal. And once you understand those elements, you are good to go with these kinds of questions. Now, let us go to question 2. Question 2 asks, which apparatus is most suitable for measuring exactly 25 centimeters cubed of water during a school investigation? And we have a measuring cylinder option A, we have a beaker option B, C test tube, and D evaporating dish. Now, the correct answer here is A, a measuring cylinder. Why? Because graduations allow a reasonably accurate volume reading. A measuring cylinder will help us to have a reasonably accurate volume reading, because here we need 25 centimeters cubed. And then the wider lesson is this. Use the correct apparatus. You see, you should read the scales at eye level and then record units and repeat reading when appropriate. So in KJSEA, use the evidence in in question and do not choose an option merely because one word looks familiar. You see, you should look at something like in this question. You are supposed to ask yourself, which of these apparatus will help us to measure a liquid accurately? And here it is a measuring cylinder because it has all those measurements and it is more accurate compared to others. Now, why are the other options wrong? I will tell you why did we not choose option B, C and D. That is very important for you to know. First of all, a beaker gives approximate volume. You see, when it comes to a measuring cylinder, it has graduations which allow a reasonably accurate volume reading, but a beaker is only going to give you approximate volume. And then what about a test tube? A test tube is mainly for holding or heating small samples. That is what we use test tubes for. You hold and you heat small samples. And then what about an evaporating dish? An evaporating dish is used for evaporation. You see, you should always remember that for scientific measurements, you need to use the correct apparatus. You see, especially when it comes to reading the scales at eye level and then recording the units and then repeating readings when appropriate, like when you are using a measuring cylinder. Now, with that, we go to question 3. Question 3 says, a stone has a mass of 60 grams and a volume of 20 centimeters cubed. What is the density? Now, for this question, I calculated and the density is B, 3 grams per centimeters cubed. Why? Because you are supposed to take 60 divided by 20. You are supposed to take mass divided by volume. So 60 over 20, it is going to give us 3 grams cubed. So you need to know that density is equals to mass divided by volume. So this is about a formula. Density is equals to mass over volume. So what is the mass in this case? The mass is 60 grams. And what is the volume? The volume is 20 centimeters cubed. So we take 60 divided by 20 and then we get the answer is 3 grams per centimeters cubed. So the common units, sometimes you need to convert the units, but in this case we have grams and centimeters, and the common units here we have grams per centimeters cubed. Sometimes we have kilograms per meters cubed. So if it comes to your exam, use the evidence in the question and do not choose an option because one word looks familiar. You need to choose just like the other question. Don't look at the A, B, C, D and look what looks familiar or the one that looks like it's not a trick. In this question, you need to calculate. You see, so here it is just about remembering the formula that density is equals to mass over volume. Sometimes they will give you the density and the mass, and then you are asked the volume. That should also be easy because now the volume, you are going to solve for the volume when you have the density and mass, or sometimes you need to solve for the mass. But if you have the mass and the volume, to find the density, you take mass, you divide by volume. That is the formula. With that, we go to question number 4. Question 4. Which method separates the different colored substances in black ink? Wow. So which method separates the different colored substances in black ink? This question is very interesting. That is something that we call, we have let me first read the options. We have A, filtration, we have chromatography, we have decantation, and magnetic separation. So the correct answer here is B, chromatography. Why? Because components travel at different rates on the paper. Chromatography, remember that we are using a paper, and you know that those colors, those different colors, they are different components. And those colors, they are going to dissolve into the paper, and we know that components travel at different rates on the paper. So you need to choose a method from a difference in physical property, you see, particle size, solubility, boiling point. So when it comes to separation of materials, this is what we look at. That's what I'm saying, that we look at the particle size, the solubility, the boiling point. Sometimes it is about the boiling point. Sometimes it is about magnesium or movement through a medium, like in this case. So use the evidence in the question. Like in this case, we are looking at colored substances, and if it is colored substances, for us to be able to separate them, we need to use a paper, and that method is called chromatography. You see, so why are the other options not correct, and in which case do we need to choose them? So let us start with A. When it comes to filtration, filtration is used to separate an insoluble solid from a liquid. So for example, if you have a solid that like a stone in water or soil in water, there you can use filtration. When you have soil in water, you can use filtration because we are separating an insoluble solid from a liquid. Then option C, decantation. Decantation pours off a liquid from settled material. Still in soil, if you have maybe clay is the one that settles very well in the soil, in the water. So we can use decantation. We can pour out the liquid from the settled material, and then now through that method we can be able to separate the two elements. Then number D, option D, magnetic separation. So a magnet works only when a component is magnetic. So we may have maybe something that is magnetic and another one which is not magnetic. In that case, a magnet will work very well because you just pass over a magnet and it is going to attract the component that is magnetic. And then with that, you are going to be able to separate them. So when it comes to the methods of separation, just look at the elements you have and how you can separate them, and then now say what that method is called. Again, that is a very common question, so make sure that you understand these methods and what they are called. Then question number 5. So for question 5, which statement correctly describes a compound? Now we have A, B, C, and D, and I'm going to read and then explain what it is. Number 1, we are going to read at the explanation, and then I will tell you what it is so that we can know which statement correctly describes a compound. A, its components can be separated by physical means. That is a mixture. A mixture is the one whose components can be separated by physical means. Then B, it contains substances mixed in any proportion. Now mixtures may have variable composition, so that is not a mixture, because here if it contains substances that have been mixed in proportions, that is not a mixture, because for a mixture they can be variable. So option B is not a mixture, and option A is a mixture. Okay, option B is not a compound. Then C, its elements are chemically combined in a fixed proportion. That is correct. Chemical bonding gives a fixed composition and new properties. You see, that is what we call a compound. Why? Because when we have elements that are chemically combined in fixed proportion, that is going to give us something we call chemical bonding, and it is going to give fixed composition, and it can also give us new properties because these are chemicals. Then number D, it always contains a metal. Now many compounds contain no metal, such as water, so that is not exactly a compound. A compound does not necessarily have to have water. Actually, most of them does not have to have metal. Actually, most of them don't have metal. So a compound does not necessarily have to have a metal. So for these types of questions, one of the things to always remember is that elements contain one kind of atom and compounds contain chemically combined elements, and then mixtures retain component properties. So when you know that a compound can form as a result of mixing chemicals, and then a mixture is just mixing two different elements, you see. So this kind of question cannot confuse you. Now we go to question number 6. Which observation provides the strongest evidence that a chemical change has occurred? Which observation provides the strongest evidence that a chemical change has occurred? Then we have ice melts, we have water evaporates, a new gas is produced during a reaction, we have sugar dissolves in water. So in this question, the correct answer is C, that a new gas a new gas is produced during a reaction. Why? Because gas production can show that a new substance was formed. When a reaction occurs and then you see gas, that shows that a new substance was formed. You see? Now, physical changes do not form new substances, but chemical changes form one or more new substances. It can be one substance or more substance. So that is why option C is very strong. And why are others not correct? So we are going to look at A, B, and D. Why are they not correct? So for example, A is about melting. Ice melts. Melting is a physical state of change. It is when an ice is melting, that is a physical state of change. And then number 2, evaporation is also a physical state of change. Melting and evaporation, they are like both of them like opposite. They include physical state of change. And then D, dissolving sugar does not create a new substance. You see, you still have your sugar and your water. You can actually separate them. It is possible to separate sugar in water. How? By evaporating. You just evaporate the water and you'll be left with your sugar. So there is no new substance that is formed. There is no chemical reaction. But option C, when a new gas is formed, we definitely know that there was that is a strong evidence that a chemical reaction took place. Then with that, we go to question number 7. Which class of fire is most safely controlled using sand or dry powder extinguisher rather than water? We have burning paper, cooking oil, dry leaves, burning cotton cloth. So the correct option here is B, burning cooking oil. Why? Because water can spread hot oil and cause violent splashing. You see? Now, what do you need to know about questions about heat and extinguishing fire? Is that we need to remove heat, fuel, or oxygen when safe. So, match the extinguisher to the fire and raise the alarm. That is what you are supposed to do. So, when it comes to these kind of questions, they are very easy. You just need to think and see which is the most safe way. For example, to cool off a burning paper, burning cooking oil, dry leaves, or cotton cloth. Now, why are the other options not correct? I'm going to tell you. For example, for A, when it comes to burning paper, water can be used in many ordinary solid fires like paper when safe. And then B, burning cooking oil, that is correct because water can spread hot oil and cause violent splashing. So water should not be used in hot oil. And then C, burning dry leaves, water can be used there because dry leaves are ordinary combustible solid. And then D, cotton is also an ordinary combustible solid. So that one can also be cooled off using water. We can use water to extinguish the fire. Then we go to question number 8. Question 8. An atom has atomic number 12 and mass number 24. How many neutrons does it contain? So question 8 is very easy because for you to calculate the neutrons, you just need to take the mass number minus the atomic number. Very easy. Whenever you are given the mass number and the atomic number, for you to find the neutrons, you take the mass number minus the atomic number. Just a very simple formula. So here what are we going to do? We are going to take the mass number, which is 24, and then minus the atomic number, which is 12, and then we get 12. So the correct answer is A, 12. Why? Because it is mass number 24 minus 12 atomic number, we get 12. So for question 8, I won't explain much because you just need to master that formula. So remember this. When you master such a formula, if the question comes in a way you are given the atomic number and the neutrons, that should also be easy because if we say neutrons is equals to mass number minus atomic number, then that means mass number is equals to neutrons plus atomic number. You see, so they can switch. If you are given the neutrons and the mass number, you will take the mass number minus the neutrons. You will take the mass number minus the neutrons to get the atomic number. So it is also a very easy question for us to do. If they twist it in any way, just remember the formula, apply it, and you're going to get it correct. Now we go to the next question, question number 9. Which property makes copper suitable for electrical wiring? So here we are talking about copper. Why is it suitable for electrical wiring? Again, a very interesting and very common question. So, copper. What makes it very suitable? Now, the correct answer is C, good electrical conductivity and ductility. When it comes to copper, I always know that it is about electrical conductivity. It has very good electrical conductivity and also ductility. So the correct option is C. Why? Because copper carries current and it can be drawn into wires. You see? So metals are useful because of conductivity, their strength, their malleability, and their ductility. So alloys improves selected properties. So that is, alloys is what helps to improve the selected properties. So when it comes to this kind of question, always remember that copper is used for electrical wiring because of its good electrical conductivity. Let us look at why the other options are not correct. So, number A, brittleness. First of all, copper is not brittle under normal working conditions. It is not brittle. Then, B, poor thermal conductivity. Actually, copper conducts heat very well. It conducts heat very well, so B cannot be correct. And then D, low melting point. Copper does not have a low melting point. It has a very high melting point. So actually the only correct answer there is option C. Then now we go to question number 10. Question 10. Which combination is required for iron to rust? We have oxygen only, water only, oxygen and water, carbon dioxide and heat. I'm sure you don't feel such kind of questions. So the correct answer here is C, oxygen and water. Because for iron to rust, we need both oxygen and water. Both of them must be present. And then there is another way they ask this question, that what do you do to prevent rusting for iron? What do they do? So one of the things is painting. When you paint, you are going to prevent the iron from rusting. Then number 2, oiling. Another 3 is galvanizing and alloying. You see, so these are methods that are used to then the question asks methods used to avoid rusting in iron. You can say painting, you can say oiling, galvanizing and alloying. So we go to the next question, question 11. A water sample forms very little lather with soap but forms scum. Water is most likely distilled, soft, hard, or pure rainwater. Now again, that question is not harder because you just need to think, why is this water forming very little? Why is it forming very little? So of course that is hard water. That is C. Hard water is the one that forms very little lather with soap but forms scum. Actually, hard water also forms scum. So now, calcium and magnesium compounds reduce lather, because when we say the water is hard, it means that it has these ions, calcium and magnesium ions, and they reduce lather and they also form scum. So hardness reduces soap lather, and then boiling will help to remove temporary hardness. Then we can also use washing soda or distillation, which will help to soften the water. So for this question, you need to make sure that you just determine is this water hard or not hard. Actually, it is very easy. Whenever you see water that is not forming with soap and it is also forming scum, that is hard water, you see. And then this question, where they twist it, they do ask how you can make it better. How do you make this water better? So you can say if it is temporary hardness, you can boil, you see. But if it is not temporary hardness, you can use washing soda or you can use distillation, which will help to soften the water. Then we go to question number 12. Which structure controls the movement of substances into and out of a cell? So we have our options there. we have cell membrane, we have nucleus, we have cytoplasm, and we have vacuole. So the correct option here is cell membrane. Cell membrane is the structure that controls the movement of substances into and out of a cell, you see. So the selectivity permeable membrane regulates the exchange. When it comes to the cell membrane, remember that we have the electively permeable membrane, and this is what helps to regulate the exchange. So plant and animal cells share a membrane, a cytoplasm, and a nucleus, you see. However, plant cells also have a cell wall, they also have chloroplast, and they have large vacuole. So these are some of the things I'm mentioning because they are common in the exams. The difference between animal cells and plant cells. Remember that plant and animal cells, they share a membrane. They both have a membrane. They have a cytoplasm and they have a nucleus, you see. But for plant cells, in addition to that, they have a cell wall, they have chloroplast, and they have a large vacuole. That is very important for you to always remember. With that, we go to the next question. So we are now going to question number 13. Question 13. A peeled potato strip gains mass after being placed in distilled water. Which process caused the gain? Now, the correct answer here is, that is osmosis, and osmosis is B. Why? Because water moved through partially permeable membrane into cells, you see. Osmosis concerns water across selectively permeable membrane. Always remember that osmosis is the movement of water where there is selectively permeable membrane. However, when it comes to diffusion, it concerns particles moving down a concentration gradient. So maybe when particles are moving from higher concentration to a lower concentration, that is what we call diffusion. Now, why are the other options correct? Let us look at them. We start with A, respiration. Remember that respiration releases energy from food, so this cannot be respiration. Option B is correct. What we have here is osmosis. And then option C, transportation, is water loss from plant surface. That is what we call transpiration, is water loss from plant surfaces. And then D, excretion. Excretion removes metabolic wastes, you see. So osmosis concerns water across a selectively permeable membrane, and then diffusion concerns particles moving down a concentration gradient. And then excretion is about removing metabolic waste, and then transpiration is about water loss from plant surfaces. It is called transpiration, yes. So always remember this, very important for you. Then question number 14. In human beings, fertilization normally occurs in the... So that question is also very easy. First of all, it is asking about human beings. Where does fertilization occur? It occurs in the oviduct. Why? Because the sperm and the ovum normally meet in the oviduct, you see. And then you need to know them. You also need to know the reproductive organs. You need to know about puberty. You need to know about fertilization. You need to know about implantation, about prenatal health, and also responsible health choices. So these are some of the questions that are common in the papers. Now, when it comes, I'm going to look at the other options. The uterus. Why is the uterus not correct? Because the embryo will later develop in the uterus. But remember, this is not where fertilization has occurred. The question is asking about fertilization. It is occurring in the oviduct, but that embryo, as it forms, it will later develop in the uterus. And then C, the ovary produces the ova, so it is not the ovary. The purpose of the ovary is to produce the ova. That is the egg that is going to mix with the sperm. And then we have the vagina. Now that is for receiving the sperm and forming the birth canal. It has nothing to do with fertilization. Fertilization occurs in the oviduct. Then with that, we go to question number 15. We are in question number 15 now. Question 15. Which organ removes urea, excess salt and excess water from the blood? Lung, kidney, heart or stomach? That is the kidney. The kidney is the one that removes urea, especially when you see urea, excess salt and excess water. That is the work of the kidney, because kidneys filter blood and then to form urine. That is what we call urine. The urea, the salts, the water, they are removed through urine. And some other things you need to know when it comes to these types of questions. You need to know that excretion removes metabolic waste. What is excretion? It is about the removal of metabolic waste. And then you need to know that it is the kidneys that form the urine. And then the lungs remove carbon dioxide. What do the lungs excrete? They help to remove the carbon dioxide. And then what about skin? Our skin produces sweat. So those are some of the things that you need to know about removing waste from the body. With that, we go to question number 16. Which enzyme begins the digestion of starch in the mouth? So this is about enzymes, and again a very interesting question. Now, the correct option here is C, salivary amylase. Salivary amylase. Yes, it is C, because A is pepsin, B is lipase, and D is trypsin. But the enzyme that begins digestion of starch in the mouth is called salivary amylase. You see, the salivary amylase starch digestion. It is starch that is digested. Now, when it comes to this kind of question, some of the other things you need to know is that digestion breaks large insoluble food molecules into small soluble substances for absorption in the body. So what is digestion? Digestion involves just breaking the large insoluble food molecules, because we are taking in large food molecules, but for them to be absorbed in the body and be useful to the body, they need to be broken down into soluble substances, you see. So that is what we call digestion. Now, we can look at the other options and why they are not correct. That is also very important. So A, pepsin. Pepsin digests protein in the stomach. That is very important. That is an enzyme that digests protein in the stomach. What about lipase? Lipase is about fats. When I see the word lipase, I always connect it with fats. It is used to digest fats. And then trypsin. Trypsin helps to digest proteins in the small intestines. Trypsin is found in the small intestines, and it helps to digest proteins. Always remember that. So for nutrition in animals, and when we are talking about digestion, we are talking about breaking large insoluble fats. It is these enzymes that help a lot. Pepsin, proteins; lipase, fats; trypsin, proteins in the small intestines, you see. And then the salivary amylase, it helps to digest starch, and it starts in the mouth. Okay, now we go to the next question, question number 17. Which raw materials are used by green plants during photosynthesis? Interesting. So we have our options there. We have oxygen and glucose, carbon dioxide and water, water and oxygen, glucose and mineral salts. The correct answer there is B, carbon dioxide and water, because carbon dioxide and water are converted using light energy, you see. So when it comes to this kind of questions, also remember that photosynthesis needs carbon dioxide, water and light, and chlorophyll, you see, to do what? To produce glucose and oxygen, which is very useful to the plant. I hope you got that carbon dioxide, water are converted using light energy. And then what are needed for photosynthesis? We need carbon dioxide, we need water, we need light, and we need chlorophyll. Why? To help in the production of glucose and oxygen for the plants. Very important. So for this question also, we can look at the other options and why they are not correct. Oxygen and glucose. Question option A, oxygen and glucose. First of all, these are products. When you are asked about the products of photosynthesis, that is oxygen and glucose. Carbon dioxide and water, B, that is correct. Then C, water and oxygen. Oxygen is not raw material in photosynthesis. We don't need oxygen. And then D, glucose and mineral salts. Glucose is a product, while mineral salts support growth, but they are not needed for photosynthesis to take place. They only help to support growth of that plant. Okay, we go to the next question. Question number 18. Which feature best helps a wind-pollinated flower to release pollen into the air? Which feature best helps a wind-pollinated flower to release pollen into the air? We have A, large scented petals, B, nectar-producing glands, C, anthers hanging outside the flower, D, sticky pollen grains. Here, the correct answer is anthers hanging outside the flower, C. Why? Because correctly exposed anthers allows wind to carry pollen. When the anthers are correctly exposed, they are going to allow the wind to carry pollen. You see? Now, for this kind of questions, you also need to know about flower parts of a flower, very common. Then you need to know about pollination, also very common question. You need to know about fertilization, about fruit formation, how a fruit is formed, and you also need to know about seed dispersal, like in the case of this question. So once you are prepared in those 5 areas, flower parts, the parts of a flower, pollination, fertilization, fruit formation, and they also ask about seed dispersal, like in this question, you are going to be ready to tackle such kind of questions. Now we can look at why the other options are not correct, like option A, large scented petals. Now, large scented petals attract animal pollinators. They help to attract animal pollinators. Then nectars attract animal pollinators. Is B nectars? Yes. Nectar producing glands. Those helps to attract animal pollinators. Then option D was wind pollinated. So D is sticky pollen grains. Now, wind pollinated pollen is usually light and smooth and not sticky. You see? So for reproduction in plants, it is very easy. You just need to make sure that you understand how pollination occurs, and when you understand how it takes place, this kind of question should not be hard for you to answer. Then with that, we go to question number 19. Question 19, which relationship benefits both organisms involved? A tick feeding on a cow, a lion killing a zebra, rhizobium bacteria living in a legume root nodule, a tapeworm living in the intestine. There, definitely the correct answer is that bacteria living in legume root nodule. Why? Because bacteria obtain shelter while the plant gains usable nitrogen. When it comes to bacteria in the root of the plant, it is going to help that plant to gain the nitrogen, and then that bacteria is, in this case, it is called the rhizobium bacteria. It is getting shelter. So when it comes to this kind of question, again, I'm going to tell you some of the topics you need to look at. Look at the food chains. You should know from the food chains. Food chains are very common. That question is very much testable. Food chain, you need to know about the primary consumer, the secondary consumer, the tertiary consumer. Then know about the symbiosis. Symbiosis is also very important. Know about competition and nutrient cycling. Competition and nutrient cycling, which helps to show how organisms depend on one another. That is about how organisms depend on one another, like in this case. So once you are prepared in those areas, these kind of questions will be easy for you to tackle. And then with that, maybe we can look at the rest. Here, looking at option A, B, C, and D, and what the year will help you to know. Now, when we talk about a tick feeding on a cow, only the tick is benefiting, but the cow is harmed, you see. And then B, that is a predator that is benefiting, but it is killing the prey, because the lion is killing the zebra. And then number D, A tapeworm is benefiting while the host is harmed, because the tapeworm is living in the intestine. It is harming the host. You see? Yeah. Now let us go to question 20. In an electric torch, energy is mainly transformed from, that is also it is usually chemical to electrical. So when it comes to a torch, chemical to electrical light. And that is option A, chemical to electrical light. When it comes to a torch, we are converting chemical to electrical light. Why? Because the cell supplies electrical energy that produces light. It is the cell that is supplying that electrical energy. So here some heat is involved, and some of the other things you can know about this topic is about energy changes from devices. Some spreads to the surrounding as heat or sound. You see, so you need to know about how energy is changing within a device or to form maybe the way this chemical energy is forming light. How does it happen? That is going to be helpful to you. So option A, the cell supplies electrical energy that produces light with some heat. Then option B, the sequence does not occur in a torch, because B is saying light to chemical sound. This does not occur in a torch. And then C, heat to chemical to electrical. No, it does not start with heat then chemical to electrical. A torch is not powered by heat. It is powered by chemical to electrical. Then D, electrical to chemical only. Light is a major final useful form, so it is not electrical to chemical, because the final product is light. So electrical to chemical, they have switched. Now we go to question 21. A force of 200 N acts on an area of 0.5 meters squared. What pressure is produced? Again, this question is about applying the formula. So question 21, we just need to apply the formula. They need us to calculate the pressure. Now, pressure, it is equals to force over area. P is equals to F over A. Pressure is equals to force over area. And what is the force? 200 over area, which is 0.5, which is going to give us 400 PA. So the answer is 400 PAC. That is about a formula. So then we go to question 22. Why are tractor tires made wide? Why? Now, even before you answer this question, why do you think the tractor tires are made wide? So here, first of all, you should think about pressure and contact area. You see, because this tractor, you need to consider the pressure that is applied and needed, and also the contact area, because if the tire is big, then the contact area is going to be big. And then now you can look at, before even you look at the options, at your mind you should already have an idea of why this tire could be big. And the options, number 1, to increase pressure by reducing the area. Is that correct? No, that is not correct, because reducing the area would actually increase the pressure. And then B, to reduce pressure by increasing the contact area. That is correct, because the same force acts over a large area. So B is the correct option. And then C, to increase the tractor's weight. There is nothing like that. The tire weight does not create additional weight to the tractor. And then D, to reduce the force acting on the ground to 0. Now remember that the force remains. It only spreads over a large area, but it is going to remain the same. So it is not going to reduce it to 0. Now the correct option there is B. Then we go to question number 23. An object is placed beyond the center of curvature of a concave mirror. The image formed is, so here we have an object, and this object has been placed beyond the center of curvature of a concave mirror. So what image will be formed? So we have our options there. We have virtual, upright and magnified image. We have real, inverted and diminished. we have real, upright and same size. We have virtue, inverted and diminished. For here, the correct answer should be B, real, inverted and diminished. Why? Because the image forms between F and C and is real. First of all, the image is real and it forms between F and C. You see, this image is also inverted and it is smaller. You see, so when it comes to this kind of questions, I should remember about using a pole. You should remember about principal axis. You should remember about focus and center of curvature, and also describe image formation. Very important. It is common. You can maybe get a question or two. Maybe it should be one question that is testing this area. But if they decide to bring two or more, make sure that you read enough about curvature to describe image formation. Also remember to read about poles and principal axis. You need to know about focus and center of curvatures. So with that, you should be prepared to tackle such kind of questions. Then we go to question number 24. Question 24. Which description of a transverse wave is correct? So we are going to look at the options one at a time. Option A. Particles vibrate parallel to the direction of travel. First of all, that describes a longitudinal wave. You see, when particles vibrate parallel to the direction of travel, that is usually a longitudinal wave. Don't ever forget that. Then B, particles do not vibrate. So remember that particles vibrate as energy passes, so that cannot be our answer. And then C, particles vibrate perpendicular to the direction of travel. That is correct, because vibration is at right angles to wave travel. So when it comes to C, vibration perpendicular to the direction of travel, that is going to be correct, and we are saying it is correct because vibration is at right angles to wave travel. Then D, it can travel only through liquids. Transverse waves include electromagnetic waves and waves on strings, so it is not about liquids. With that, we are done with question 24. Question 25. Which change will increase the pitch of a vibrating guitar string, reducing its frequency? We have increasing its frequency, increasing its amplitude only, and stopping its vibration. The correct answer there is B, increasing its frequency. Why? Because pitch depends mainly on frequency. So the wider lesson is that sound need a medium. You see, you need to learn about frequency effects, that frequency affects pitch, and then amplitude affects loudness. Frequency affects pitch, and then amplitude affects loudness. Those are some of the things that you need to know. Now, when we say that reducing its frequency, remember that lower frequency will give a lower pitch, and then increasing its frequency, that is correct because pitch depends mainly on frequency. Then C, increasing its amplitude only. Remember that amplitude mainly changes the loudness. Then D, stopping its vibration. No sound is produced when vibration stops. So when there is no vibration, no sound is going to be produced. Then we go to question number 26. Question 26. Which action best prevents the spread of an infectious disease? So here we are going to look at one option at a time and say whether it is correct or not. A, sharing personal items. Remember that sharing can transfer pathogens, so that is not correct. B, ignoring symptoms. Now, early responsible action is very important because it is going to limit the spread of that disease. And then C, practicing proper hygiene and following health guidance. That is correct because hygiene, vaccination where necessary, and health guidance will help to reduce transmission. And then D, taking antibiotics for every illness without advice. That is very wrong because antibiotics do not treat viruses actually. It is misuse. If you use antibiotic to treat viruses, you are using a drug that is not correct, and it is actually going to promote resistance. It will promote resistance of that virus, making it even harder to treat. Well, so now with that, we go to question number 27. Which variable should a learner deliberately change in a fair scientific investigation? Dependent variable. Remember that the dependent variable is measured. Then B, controlled variable. Controlled variables are kept constant. So when we are doing a project, the controlled variable are kept constant. Then independent variable, that is correct, because the independent variable is deliberately changed to help us compare what we are looking at. And then D, a conclusion. Remember that a conclusion is made after the results have been analyzed, so that you can give what you are concluding. Now, for scientific investigations, you need to remember about identifying variables, about using controls, about measuring carefully, about repeating, the importance of repeating the procedure of the test that you are doing, the importance of analyzing evidence, and making supported conclusion using your analysis or your results. Those are some of the things that you need to know when it comes to such kind of questions. Then next we go to question number 28. Why is a boiling tube pointed away from people while heating a substance? Now that is easy. Why? Why do we point a substance away from people? The correct answer should be about prevention of injury, because one thing that matter in the tube can just splash out. So we need to prevent it from injuring people. So we are looking for an answer that looks something like that. A, to make the substance change in color. That is wrong. To prevent injury if hot material spurts out. Very correct, B. And then C, to increase the mass of the substance. That is not correct. To stop all heat loss. That is wrong. Pointing towards people can cause injury. So we point away from people to prevent injury if hot material spurts out. Then we go to question number 29. Which practice supports environmental sustainability? Releasing untreated waste into a river. That is not correct. Burning all crop residues. That is not correct. When we burn all crop residues, that is not correct. We should actually leave them so that they can decompose and be used as manure in the soil. Then C, reducing waste, reusing material, and recycling. That is correct. That is going to support environmental sustainability. Then D, cleaning vegetation from riverbanks. So when we are clearing vegetation from the riverbanks, do you think that is going to help? And if it is going to help, how is it going to help? Remember that vegetation helps to protect banks against erosion. I know this looks like it is good when we are clearing vegetation along the riverbanks, but that should not be done. Why? Because that vegetation is protecting the riverbanks against erosion. So they should be left there. They should be left there and not cleared. If you clear, that river may lead to soil erosion, which is not good for the environment. With that, we go to question number 30. A learner obtains unexpected experiment results. What is the most scientific next step? A, change the results to fit the prediction. That is being dishonest. If you change the results, changing will mean that student is dishonest. Then B, repeat the procedure and check variables and measurements. That is correct. Even if you know the expected results, you need to still repeat the procedure, and maybe you can even help to improve the reliability of those results or see if there are any errors. Then C, hide the results. Now, unexpected data may be reported. So if you hide the results, that is not correct, because if you do the procedure again and then give your results, that is going to help see if there are any discrepancies. So hiding the results is not the answer. Then form a conclusion without examining the data. Again, that is wrong, because a conclusion must be based on analyzed evidence. You must be able to do that project yourself or that experiment and see the results that you get yourself and how they compare to the ones that you have obtained. And with that, we are done with section A, and now we are ready to go to section B. In this section B, we don't have the multiple choice ABCD, so we are just going to read the questions and then see how these questions should be answered by the learner. Question 31. A learner wants to investigate how water temperature affects the time taken for sugar to dissolve. State the independent variable. And then B. State one variable that should be kept constant. And then C. Name the instrument used to measure the temperature. So this question carries 3 marks. So for each and everything you state, you get 1 point. The independent variable here is the temperature of the water. So you need to know about dependent and independent variable. And the dependent variable is the one that depends on the other to change. And in this case, the dependent variable is the temperature of the water. Then the time taken to dissolve is the dependent variable, because the time taken for sugar to dissolve depends on the temperature of the water. It is depending on the temperature of the water, but the temperature of the water is the independent variable. Then B, state one variable that should be kept constant. So here you may state amount of mass of sugar that should be kept constant. You can also talk about the volume of water. It should remain the same. The stirring rate also should remain the same. The particle size or same container. You can state any one of these elements and you will be correct. And then C, name the instrument used to measure the temperature. To measure temperature, we use a thermometer. Then with that, we are done with question 31. We go to 32. An atom X has atomic number 13 and mass number 27. Determine the number of protons, electrons, and neutrons in the atom. So for this question number 32, you just need to do some calculation, and you need to say that protons is equal to, so you are expected to do some calculations. We have protons, they are 13, and then we have electrons, they are 13 because the atom is neutral. Remember that the atom is neutral, so the electrons are 13. So how do we get the neutrons? For the neutrons, we are going to take the mass number, which is 27, and then we minus the atomic number, which is 13, and then we get 14. So the neutrons are 14, and that is the correct number. And then if you are asked to write the electronic arrangement, of course you are taking that 14, that 13, that 13 to arrange the electronic arrangement, we use the atomic number, which is 13. So we are taking 2:8. Remember, we start with 2, then we go to 8, then the outer layer is going to be 3. 2:8:3. Yeah. Then we go to the next question, question number 33. 2 equal water samples, P and Q, were shaken with equal amount of soap. P formed much lather while Q formed scum and little lather. A. Classify P and Q. That is 2 marks. Then B. State 2 methods that can soften temporary and hard water. This question I had already addressed it in the other section. So of course for this question, we know that the one that formed, that is soft water, that is not hard water. Very important to remember. We say that hard water is the one that does not form. So P is soft water and then Q is hard water. And then how can we soften it? We can soften it by boiling for temporary hard water, and then we can also soften by adding washing soda or distillation. You see, you can accept, any of the 2 is going to be accepted: boiling, adding washing soda, or distillation. All those are correct options. So question 34. A learner placed potato strips in distilled water and concentrated salt solution for 1 hour. Predict the change in strip placed in distilled water. That is 1 mark. And then B, explain the change. And then C, predict and explain what happens to the strip in concentrated salt solution. So this for this question, you are supposed to understand that the strip is going to become firm or turgid and it may gain mass. Why? Because water enters the potato cells by osmosis. When it enters by osmosis, here this means that water will move from higher water concentration through selectively permeable membrane. And then for question C, it asks that predict and explain what happens to the strip in concentrated salt solution. Now, the salt solution strip becomes soft or flaccid and it may lose mass. Why? Because the water leaves the cell by osmosis into the more concentrated solution. So, when you explain that process, you are going to be correct. With that, we move to question number 35. A box of mass 30 kg rests on a face measuring 0.5 meter by 0.2 meter. Take gravitational field strength as 10 N per kg, and then A, calculate its weight, and then B, calculate the area of contact, and then C, calculate the pressure on the floor. So this question is also very interesting. So for this question, we need to work with formula. See, so we first need to calculate the weight. It says, the question says that calculate its weight. So the weight, for weight we are going to take 30 multiplied by 10. Why? Because we have 10, we have the gravitational field strength which is 10, and we have the mass of the box which is 30 kg. So when you take 30 multiplied by 10, because that is N per kg, so it is like N over kg, and then multiply by 30 kg, and that is going to give us 300 N. So that is the weight of them, and that is the weight of this box. And then number 2, calculate the area of contact. The area of contact, that is very easy. We only need to take the face, we need to take the length multiplied by width. 0.5, area is equals length times width. So that is 0.5 by 0.2, and then we get 0.1 meter squared. And then number 3, we need to calculate the pressure, and pressure is equals to force divided by area. What is the force? The force, we have found the force, it is 3, we know that the force is 300, and then you divide by the area. What is the area? So the area we have calculated in B, and we have found that the area is 0.10 meter squared. So we are going to take 300, which is the force we calculated in A, and then we divide by 0.10, and then we get 3000. I hope that you are getting these calculations. We have said we start by calculating the weight. We take 30, we multiply by 10, and we get 300 N, that is the weight. Then B, to get the area, length times width, we take 0.5 times 0.2, we get 0.10 meter squared. And then C, to calculate the pressure, we take now that weight, we divide by the area. So we take 300 N, divide by 0.10, we get 3000 PA. So that is the correct answer for C, because for C we are calculating the pressure. And with those calculations, with those 3 calculations, you should get all the points there. You should get all the 4 marks there. Then we go to the next question, question number 36. Question 36. A detached plant has part of one leaf covered with opaque black paper and is placed in sunlight. After several hours, the leaf is tested for starch. Why was the plant detached? That is A. Then B, state the expected iodine test result for the exposed part. Then C, explain the difference between the exposed and the covered parts. That is very easy. First of all, you need to know that. So for this question, let us answer one part at a time. Number 1, why was the plant detached? It was to remove the previously stored starch. That is why it was detached. And then state the expected iodine test result for the exposed part. Now, if iodine test is done, the exposed part is going to turn blue-black because the exposed part received light and made starch by photosynthesis. So we expect that it is going to turn blue-black. We call that color blue-black. And then explain the difference between the exposed and the covered parts. First of all, the exposed parts were receiving light and the one that is not exposed was not receiving light. So the covered part lacked light and remains yellow-brown because it has no starch formed. So that is the difference. The difference, you are going to explain that the part that was exposed, it made starch, it is green, and the one that was covered, it lacked light and therefore it is going to remain yellow-brown. And if an iodine test is done, the one that was exposed is going to turn blue-black. That is the correct option. That is how we solve this question, and it is also very common, so it is good to study it. Then question number 37. Question number 37. State the function of the stigma in a flower. And then B, distinguish between pollination and fertilization. And then C, state one importance of seed dispersal. So for A, state the function of stigma in a flower. Stigma, it helps to receive pollen grains and its sticky surface helps to retain them. So when the question is asking about retention, know it is that it has that sticky surface that helps to retain those pollen grains. And then the difference between pollination and fertilization. Pollination is transfer of pollen from anther to stigma. So when pollen is transferring from anther to stigma, that is pollination. But what is fertilization? Fertilization is fusion of male and female gametes or nuclei. You see, so when they are fusing, it is called fusion. Fertilization is the fusion of male and female gametes or nuclei. So you can say nuclei, or you can say that word gametes, or is it gametes? Yeah, and nuclei. That is fertilization. And then question C is asking, state one importance of seed dispersal. Seed dispersal helps to reduce competition. It helps to reduce competition. Number 2, it helps to colonize new areas. That is the importance of seed dispersal. So you can say any one of them, or you can say both of them. And with that, we are done with question number 37. We go to question number 38. State 4 characteristics of the image formed when an object is placed between the focus and the pole of a concave mirror. This question again is about concave mirror. So you need to learn about curved mirrors because it is a very common question. And here we need to say the 4 characteristics. Now characteristics, we have magnified or enlarged image. The image is going to be virtual. The image will be upright or erect, and the image will be found behind the mirror. Those are the characteristics. The characteristics of that image is that it's going to be virtual, it is going to be upright or erect, it is going to be magnified or enlarged, and it is going to be formed behind the mirror. Those are the 4 characteristics. Then with that, we go to question number 39. Set the energy change in battery powered radio. 2 marks. Then distinguish between amplitude and frequency of a wave. So question 39 is about energy and waves, also a topic that you should not ignore. So for this question, A, state the energy change in battery powered radio. Yeah, battery powered radio. So the energy change, first of all, chemical energy in battery changes to electrical energy. You see? And then electrical energy changes mainly to sound with some heat. And then amplitude is maximum displacement from the rest position. So I think for this question, one of the things we should understand is when we are talking about battery changes to electrical energy, and then electrical energy changes to sound when it comes to radio. So they have the tendency of asking about a radio or a torch. When it comes to a radio, it is chemical energy that is changing to electrical energy, and then electrical energy is changing to sound, and then some heat, because sometimes you can find that radio is heat. So that electrical energy is changing into sound and then to heat. And then when it comes to torches, when they are asking about a torch, it is the chemical energy from the battery that is changing to electrical energy, and then electrical energy is changing to light. You see? So that is the process you just need to understand. For radios, chemical to electrical to sound and heat. And then for torch, it is chemical to electrical to light. Very important for you to always remember. And then B, distinguish between amplitude and frequency of a wave. So amplitude is maximum displacement from the rest position. And an object is in the rest position and there is maximum displacement, that is amplitude. And then frequency is number of complete oscillations per second measured in hertz. Frequency is number of complete oscillations per second measured in hertz. Those are very important things to remember. Also a very common question. Then question number 40. A farmer sprays a pesticide that kills most bees around a fruit farm. Explain 4 possible effects on the farm ecosystem. So for this question 40, we have a farmer, and this farmer is spraying a pesticide, and this pesticide is going to kill most bees around a fruit farm. Definitely there is going to be effects. And what is one of the effects? One of the effects is there is going to be reduced pollination, because it is the bees that help with the pollination. Number 2, there is going to be reduced fertilization, fruit or seed production, because when you reduce the pollination, the fertilization and seed or fruit production is also going to be less. Then next, there is going to be reduced food. So you start by reducing pollination, then with that you reduce fertilization. Because of that reduced fertilization, there is reduced food or income for the farmer, and then there is disruption of food chain or biodiversity. So in the long run, there is going to be less food in the society just because the bees were killed. And then next, when there is less food, people can even die. You can even die. So you can say possible death of non-target organisms. You see? And then another effect apart from that food chain effect, there is also going to be natural balance may be disturbed, because there is that natural balance that is in the farm and it is going to be disturbed. Another thing is that chemical residues or pollution is possible, because once that chemical is sprayed, there may be residues. Yes, the bees will die, but the chemical residues are going to be there, and there is also going to be air pollution, soil pollution that comes as a result of that spraying. So that is why alternative methods are always the best to practice responsible farming. And with that, we are done. That is the end of paper 1. I hope that you did learn, and if you learned, please like this video, subscribe. We are going to do more revision for all the papers in KJSEA. So check out our channel and learn, and make sure that for these topics that I'm stating you need to learn them, do a lot of revision, and you can do better. You can get the perfect score in integrated science, because it is not hard. This paper is not hard. You just need a lot of reading, and you just need some reading, understanding, and then critical thinking when you are doing this paper. So another tip when you are doing your integrated science, make sure that you answer every question correctly. First of all, read it very carefully, even if it is the ABCD question. And even before you look at the options, you should have an idea of what the answer is, so that when you go to the options, they are not going to confuse you. And then for the other questions that you need to write by thinking, yes, you can do it, because it is not hard. You just need to apply what you have learned and what you know. And do not assume anything when it comes to answering these questions. Just write what you know. Do not leave anything blank. And with that, I know that you can do great. You're going to perform good, and all the best as you study, and also all the best as you take your KJSEA integrated paper exam. Bye.